Okay, this is my quick introduction to CC Animate. All these tutorials are going to be done with ActionScript 3, so when you create a new document, you'll need to make sure it's of the ActionScript 3 type. Animate is also capable of doing other stuff, but I'm not going to concern myself with that in terms of HTML5 canvases or WebGLs and that sort of thing. My main focus for these set of tutorials will be around ActionScript 3 so that we can basically focus on doing animations and that sort of stuff. So once you've clicked on the Animate, you'll be given a basic layout of what you see here. In the center is our stage. This is where all the animation happens. Down the bottom we have a timeline. The timeline can have multiple layers, so we'll build up the various parts of the animation on these layers and that sort of stuff. Over on our right we have the properties menu, panel as it's referred to. This will give us all the properties about things we do. So as an example, if I happen to draw a square here and then select the square, I'm given properties of the edge stroke and the actual fill. So you can see it's a blue fill and I can change the blue fill and that sort of stuff. And I've got control over the properties concerning whatever the object is that's drawn on the screen. I also have a library of pre-created symbols. Now as you create symbols, and I'll talk about that in a moment, they'll go into the library and this is where you access them from. Then finally, down the far right hand side we have the tools. We have a selection tool, a sub-selection, free transform. These three will be used fairly frequently. We have a lasso selection tool. This is basically straight out of Photoshop. If you click and hold, you can see the other options there, so that we can take a chunk and move it around. We have the pen tool, useful for drawing complex shapes. Text tool, should be fairly obvious. A line tool, a rectangle tool, oval tools, and these are various shapes. A pencil tool, so for drawing funny pencil shapes. Depending on the features enabled on this, you can actually draw nice circles and that sort of stuff. And the features are actually down the bottom here, and you'll notice these changes. I select different things. And then there's things like the brush tool and the brush, paintbrush and brush. Then some other tools, and I'll get to these later as we go through the thing. But basically, if you need a tool to do something, it's down this far right side. If you want to know the properties of what you're working with, it's in here, and you have to select it so you can do it. So black arrow for selection, double click on it and you can select and access all the features. Across the top we have some basic menus. All of these are similar to what you would have seen elsewhere. However, I'm just going to gloss over the various features quickly. You can save or save as your working files as things. You can access previously created files. This is a fresh install, so there's nothing there. You can import to the stage or the library. So the stage is basically this bit in the middle. The library is the thing I was pointing to earlier. You can export to various image or video formats, or even an animated GIF, depending on what you want to make. And the publication settings brings up all these different options, which I'll talk about later, but that's where they're located. Edit menus are fairly standard. The view for zoom in, zoom out, most of those you would have seen before and other things. The inserting of a new symbol, the modifying of and converting to symbols. Basically, everything you can animate in Flash is a symbol of some description or another. Now, depending on what you're using it to animate with, will depend on how it's stored. And we'll get to the variations as we cover the different styles of animation as we go through all these tutorials. Next up is text stuff, which should be fairly obvious. As you can see here, sizes, alignments, and all that sort of stuff. The commands, actually no idea, I've never bothered to look at this one, but the controls are actually the useful one for what we're doing. We can test our animation, test the full movie, we can test an individual scene, and then finally we've got all these additional possibilities here in terms of additional windows. So if you're creating an interactive animation, you might go and add some actions. If I click on that, it should pop up somewhere. There it is. And we can then take this little panel and dock it into the bottom here or over the side here, and you can see how the areas get highlighted as I push them to those locations. Or we can close it to get rid of it. You'll notice that it's no longer ticked in this menu list here. And I'll get to those features as I need them. So that's a very quick and crude introduction to Flash, and I've taken a whole 5 minutes to do it. So I'm going to stop there and we'll move on to the next bit.